Well, hello, everyone. This is the Ridiculously Amazing Agent podcast, and I'm your host, Kelly Donahue Puro. And as we're kind of coming out of the coronavirus scenario, slowly but surely, sort of finding some different ways to live the new normal. I hate using these cliche words, but they make sense. We wanted to stop and take a little moment to talk about what we can do as managers, team leaders, to kind of really stick out as we change some things up. And I get this question a lot from either agency owners that are taking over an agency or a team leader that's newly promoted, now managing their peers. Like, what are the activities we should be doing on a routine basis to really thrive and excel in a leadership role? And I love this question because I think it's got so many great answers to it. The first thing that we want to say is that everybody should have some form of consistency. So one of the things that team members get really used to is the idea that we are consistently inconsistent. So here's an example. Maybe we take an initiative of we're going to make renewal review calls, which you guys know is one of our core programs, is really getting people to do that. And they say, okay, we're going to make renewal review calls. And then somebody's out and somebody's sick and someone's not doing it, and we kind of fall off the wagon. Well, this is a learned behavior, and people start to expect the idea like, okay, we'll try it for a while, but it's kind of the old analogy of we start a diet every Monday. If you can't stick to it and be commitment, it's really a challenge. And so what you have to realize as a leader is that people are going to look to you to show those boundaries. So if you have initiatives, you have to be consistently consistent. And that means, hey, if you're giving people a pass, like we tried something and now's not the right time, or we have to retreat and try to do something different, communicate that, because then that says it's your decision that we're not moving in that direction. But if you go ahead and you state something, you have to make sure you're checking in on it routinely. What they always say, it gets measured, it gets done, and that's the same thing here. So really take a moment for yourself and just say, hey, what are our key initiatives? And schedule time with yourself to check in on them. That's how we're going to check in. And now my next step is going to be somewhat disheartening. But what I like to say, it's like when you know what to expect, you're prepared for it. So oftentimes when we launch something new, we get to a place where we launch it, there's a lot of excitement, you get agreement from the team, and lo and behold, your first check-in doesn't go as amazing as that first meeting was, right? Oh, I forgot, I didn't do it. I want you to expect that. I don't want you to be happy about it, but I do want you to expect it. We just launched a new program with an agency, and there's probably about 20 people in it, and everyone's like, yeah, I would totally do it. We get to the first check-in meeting. Oh, I forgot, or the phones were busy, or I was off on this day. All those things come out because they weren't necessarily expecting to have to defend themselves on this topic. And most likely in the past, when they used those kind of reasons why, AKA excuses, it was like, okay, try harder this week. And there was no real kind of taking the wheel and modifying those behaviors. So what you have to do is expect that first week to be rocky. Expect the first 2 weeks to be rocky. We always say that when making renewal calls, we can't optimize calls that aren't being made. So, much to the chagrin of some agency owners, we stay in a holding pattern for about 8 to 10 weeks to make sure that those calls are cemented in and they're actually happening. Because if we can't optimize calls that aren't being made, so if we can't get the calls to be made consistently and routinely, there's no sense in moving on to the next phase, which is optimization. It's the same thing here. So expect a few weeks for it to be rocky. Show people you're here to support them. Give them the ways that they can do it. And make sure they know that you're going to inspect what you expect. So stop on that moment for a second. Now, the next thing I think as a team leader you really have to be good at is cutting the middle. And this isn't always easy, right? So you are kind of stuck in the middle. If you're an agency owner, you're still in this situation, even though your name's on the door or you sign all the paychecks. This scenario is listening to your team, but being able to put it through a filter. So you can't ignore what they're saying and just say, do this, do this, do this. It's not going to work. It's going to have really low morale. But you also can't, on the other side, say, okay, I'm going to give in to everything. This would be like, your child giving you the, campaign speech of the year of why chocolate cake is good for dinner. If you gave into that every time, you'd have a very big dentist bill, I'm sure. So you have to think about it from the perspective, okay, what are they saying? Now, I want to put you into the mindset of many account managers or producers, right? The mindset, unfortunately, is going to be they're going to go ahead and describe the problem to you, but really, most likely, not have a strong backing of what is the solution. So, totally frustrating, right? I call this, someone's drowning and we're describing the water rather than getting the life raft. And so you have to work with people to reframe how they approach things, right? So going back to renewal review calls, we're so busy, so-and-so's out, the phones are ringing off the hook. I want you to take a minute and let the person vent, but also identify feeling, fact. So the phone's ringing off the hook, run that call report. Everybody was busy. Okay, well, what were we busy doing? What kind of efficiencies can we pick up? Now, I'm not going to lie and tell you that your staff's going to be like, oh, absolutely, I could pick up that efficiency and make these calls. We're trying to reposition ourselves, to be honest with you. So a lot of times, something that we do in our programs is just defining success and telling people what to do if they feel like they can't get there, right? For whatever reason, because there are some legitimate times where, hey, this was a really difficult week. My standpoint is I want to take those difficult weeks and learn from them and regroup and huddle up and have hey, okay, what were the symptoms? What was the cause? What was the output? How can we regroup and be better next time we face this? But for a lot of team members, I can't do it. Is that as opposed to saying, I want you to try. So our fail-safe in all of our programs is the only time we're disappointed in you is when you don't raise your hand and ask for help. So if I'm asking you to make renewal review calls to your whole book business and we run a report and find out that it wasn't done, that means you didn't ask for help. I'm not mad about the renewal review calls being done. I'm mad you didn't ask for help. Now, do you have to see what I'm doing here, right? Making all these renewal review calls may or may not have been very difficult or impossible that week, but raising your hand for 30 seconds and saying, I'm really stuck, is completely possible. But one is vulnerable. No one likes asking for help because that might solve the problem and I might get to these renewal review calls. And so you have to really retrain your team, and this is going to take some time. Sometimes that, hey, in a situation where you're at your desk or in your living room, wherever you're working today, and you feel like you cannot do this, there's one solution. And that's all you have to do. And that's all my expectation is. And if you do that, we're good. I'll work on finding a solution. Now, after a couple tries, because you'll run those reports and it won't be there, and you have to remind people and say, hey, next time you don't ask for help, the scenario is going to be a write-up because it's not that hard to ask for help. And you need to state how serious you are on this. So really think about how you're going to frame some of that because it is a huge valuable tool. What is the let's, in case of emergency, break the glass? That's something so simple anyone could do that there'd be no excuse for it. The excuse would be vulnerability, and they don't want to show that. Or they don't want your solution. They'd rather sit in the problem and avoid the harder thing to do, which is renewal review calls versus maybe getting on quiet time. And so I think, kind of thinking through that is really key. Another strategy we love managers to be doing on a routine basis is I do think you should have a monthly meeting with your team. Just one-on-one, hey, how are things going? Now you could do this quarterly, but it really should be at, maximum time quarterly. And this is really casual. It doesn't have to be a long meeting. It shouldn't have this big review agenda. That's not what it's about. It's just kind of what's working. Somebody I was listening to a podcast said, what's the rose and what's the thorns, right? What are the things that are working? What are the things that we're stuck on? And you're going to get a lot of the scuttle of the office that maybe you're not tapped into. You're going to find out things about what's making them tick. How is their personal life? All the things that keep us all going. And ultimately it's their time to talk to you too. So while you may not have this big agenda, you don't know what's on their plate. So it's just a nice check-in. Lo and behold, these first meetings are super awkward. And that's okay. I want you guys to say that you're going to get your footing on them and people are going to open up over time. But this goes back to consistency. If you don't do it, so book them in your meeting your right now. Don't think twice about it and really honor those commitments. Don't think, I got a meeting, I'm going to move this. That doesn't work. The next thing is I do think you should be having a team meeting at a minimum every 2 weeks. And we just do wins and lessons, metrics, what are we looking at? And then some kind of training and or open forum. We send an agenda out because it's really important people know what to prep for and then go from there. But I do want everybody really kind of focused on just thinking about that for a minute, of like those check-ins. People need to be reminded 22 times as an adult of the same thing. So those meetings help you kind of amplify that message. Next week, everyone should have an annual review. I know that they're a pain and no one looks forward to them, both you and the team member, but it is the fair time and it's the honest thing to do. It's transparent. Where do they stand? What's their performance look like? We can't operate out of feeling. We talked about how staff comes to you a lot of feelings. I want you to instead think and reframe this of, this is a time to be more methodical, think about the whole year, not just this happened today or that happened today. The other reason why is that, people should be looking to some kind of raise or increase every year. Now, whether this is you believe in performance-based pay and it's through the performance of the book of business, which we love and we really encourage agencies to do, or you're not so in tune with that and you want to do a pay increase, but it should be documented. People should know what to expect so that way they don't poke around and look around at other positions. Lastly, you need to bring fun into the office too, right? As a leader, you can't just be, oh, here, work this, that, and the next thing. You need to stop for a minute and think about some fun things, like whether it's sending to their homes, something for their birthday, whether it's, hey, we were on fire last month, and you send something around. But try to think about ways to have fun and recognize people. For many, many team members in an agency, recognition is the biggest driver. And it's a thing we don't do enough of because on our desk is all the burning fires, the stuff, the horribleness. And in order to get through that, you have to stop and try to find the things that matter. So you could recognize a team member during each meeting. You could take some time personally, and recognize them, send a quick text. So a lot of ways to recognize people today, but it has to be an intention. And all too often we're waiting to be knocked off our feet. And I'm a bad one on this one, but we're waiting to be knocked off our feet by something so impressive that at the end of the day, we're like, oh my gosh, that deserves recognition. But there's a lot of tiny wins each and every single day that you should focus on. And then finally, as a leader in any role, I think the biggest thing that you have to realize, and I remember this routinely, and even though it frustrates me, I understand it. There's you and there's your team, and you have to have a vision, number one, of what you want to accomplish, and it has to be something that's attainable. So it can't be 700 things, grow the book, account round, cross-sell, save every cancellation, don't remarket, really boil it down to simplicity. Because simplicity gets results, and that's ultimately what you're looking for, and it makes your life a lot less complicated. So if it's 2 or 3 things a quarter or a year, trust me, I know in your back of your head there's 7 million things you want to work on, and you will get there. But if you pick your initiative and stick with it, it takes people some lag time, right? So you've been working on this initiative for weeks or months. In your head, it's a passion project. For them, they're just learning about it, and it's going to take some time for that adoption to really happen and for them to understand it. So you have to have a clear mission. Then you have to expect that there's you, your mission, and the team. And how people are going to get there is often very blurry for most insurance team members. So let's just say, again, we want to hit renewal review calls, right? I'm just harping on that today for whatever reason. In their mind, they're like, oh my gosh, I have no idea how we're going to do this. And think about it. Most insurance agents, we think doom, gloom, problems, all the things, like right in here. So I can see how it could be valuable. I like the idea because that's kind of what I want to do. I don't want to just take payments all day or deal with people upset about rate. But gosh, it is so foggy on how that would even work. I'm drowning at my desk right now. And so we have to give them a clear step-by-step plan and just say, this is all we need to focus on right here. If you do this week, we're good. If we do this in 2 weeks, we're good. And so breaking it down for them. Remember, as a leader, you have troops. Troops are there to execute a plan. Troops are not there to go off in their own directions to try to find out how to solve the mission, right? So the leader has to have a clear vision, but then also have a plan, and not just like, go do it yourself. And I think that's why a lot of agencies do come to us for our sales training programs and our renewal review programs. It's like, we come with that plan. We come with incentives. We come with training, the accountability. And so if this is not something common in your culture of your agency, it's almost foreign on how to do it. And our programs really help with that. And the last thing that I'm just going to say is that, when you're frustrated on something, and it's human nature, your team will get frustrated with you. You'll get frustrated with them. You have to stop in the moment and kind of de-stress yourself, because when you start getting to that anxiety mode, it can really cloud your judgment and really, put you in a bad place. And instead just say, hey, okay, we have an obstacle. And an obstacle is not, a roadblock. Sometimes it gives us some directions. Well, let me stop and figure out, where are we unclear? What's the scenario? And also too, working with your team on it. Not every team member is going to get there, but the vast majority of them will, if we kind of break it down and learn a little bit more and regroup. And also understand, for many people in insurance, and I'm going to speak primarily on account managers, and this isn't everybody, but a common trait is people lack confidence. We don't set goals. We don't challenge ourselves because we're so scared of not being perfect. We're scared of letting people down, that instead of just setting goals and saying, I learned from this, I didn't get there, tell me more, we sort of poo-poo it all up front, because that vulnerability of not hitting it is so overwhelming that we'd rather stay kind of basic. And the saddest part for this on my account is I often find that, unfortunately, people never hit their potential. So we've got all these team members out there that are really great people. They have great insurance knowledge. And, all of them have different areas that we want to work on. Now, I'm somebody that, I know that there's 10 areas of life. Let me tell you something. I think that I'm pretty okay at 2 of them. And I'm constantly trying to feed myself to get better and stronger in some of those other areas. But for many of us, we don't feel like we have the time, resources, or we just don't want to put ourselves out there to be more vulnerable and try things. So that's where we have to come in as leaders, of holding their hand and coaching them through that. But if you're feeling like, hey, there's a lot of unconfidence, people want to come in and do transactions, really stop and think and have some conversations. Have them listen to this podcast. Have them listen to our 3-minute videos. Have them work with us even. We've got everything from coaching hours to our programs. We just launched our online school. So if all that seems too much, your team can take some of our trainings online just to strengthen up in this skill set. But the bottom line is really helping them unlock their potential. The saddest thing ever is that people go through their whole career without hitting their potential. And I'm going to tell you, that starts to pan out in, people get a little older and you start to see them get burned out and, this, that, and the next thing. And people wish it was the way it was a long time ago. And it's just not going to go down that path. So think about how you are leading your team. Think about some of the basic things you can do. And I like to boil it down to a checkbox. That's the way my brain works, is if I have that intention that day, I'm going to do it. But if it's sort of one of those things like, I got to remember to do it, I'm not going to. So I actually have a list, and it's like, it may sound super crazy, but it even says 2 compliments today. Because in my world, I'm the one of those epic people, oh my God, impress me, and I will grovel over you. But the little wins, I'm kind of cool, that's your job. And so I get stuck there, and I know it's a bad habit of mine. So I put a plan in place to help me see through that, which is, I get an alert, hey, did you give a compliment this morning? And sometimes I really have to dive deep and be okay. But I get there. And you'd be surprised how people really recognize, especially if it's genuine and a surprise to them. So those are our basics. Now, for all of you guys out there, obviously things have changed. We're very excited. We have 3 ways that you can work with us. One of them is live. So we're still flying to your office, because as these travel restrictions lift, I am itching to go somewhere awesome. And we have our sales, time management, and retention program in that, as well as our agency assessment. We also have that virtually. So if people are still working remotely, but you really want to tackle some of this stuff, we have programs where it's live, virtual, Zoom meetings, the whole 9, the same program, just done without the flying piece, and it's a little bit more economical for you. And then we launched our online school, where you guys actually get all the training. So sales, time management, retention, all in online school. Your team can take it on their own. And you can supplement that by buying some virtual consulting hours or training hours with me if you want to have me kind of in the background. But that is great, because you get all of them. We add new trainings in there every quarter. So I definitely would check that out. We hope all these agencies out there are doing great. We'd love to hear from you. Hopefully you're watching our daily videos. And if there's any suggestions that you guys have for topics, let us know. We want to help you. Guys, thanks so much for this podcast, and we will see you in the month of July.